I do think I would like to start with you today talking about the climate of America. And I would like to talk to you today as someone who has, not unlike me, but to a greater degree than me, participated in what others would define as mainstream media. You have been in the hallways at MSNBC. You've been on the desk at NBC. You've been in these conversations. And I think that it must be acknowledged, the tenor, the tone, the headlines today that are out there. We could start, Mark, if we wanted to, with simply the New York Times, who today ran a headline before I believe it was corrected and changed and placed differently on their website. But I believe it reads as follows. It says, Charlie Kirk, right-wing provocateur and close ally of Trump, dies at 31. Talk to me, if you would, Mark, about the climate of America and the media.
Well, I threw up a little bit when I saw that headline, although it wasn't the only one that decided the way to memorialize Charlie was to call him right wing or far right. Let me just say, listening to you at the beginning of the show talking about what made Charlie so special, you know, sometimes you go to a friend's wedding and maybe you don't know the other people doing toasts, and they say things that sound so familiar to you. Oh, they see the same thing I do. Sometimes happen at a funeral as well. What you said about Charlie is so resonant, not just for me, but for so many. And I'd urge everybody to rewind and listen again if you weren't paying close attention, because Will, you just captured him so perfectly. What made him special, what made him influential. And I've been talking to Charlie about this when I've interviewed him and on his show when I've been a guest there, and trying to explain it to Democrats, including in the last 24 hours. There's no one like Charlie, I think, in American history, because technology that he was so central to what he did didn't exist until just recently. And I've been saying to Democrats for a long time, and Gavin Newsom was one of the few Democrats who understood this, you don't have a Charlie Kirk. Part of why you're losing politically so often is you don't have a Charlie Kirk. As for the media, I have worked in traditional media, and I've also, throughout my career, even when I worked there, have been a huge critic of it. So what we're seeing play out now is no surprise. What I've asked people on the left to understand is three things. One is, if this had happened if the left did have their version of Charlie Kirk and that person had been assassinated, the coverage would be so different. The coverage would be indicting the far right for killing that person, rather than what we see now, which is calling on all sides to do better, which is great, and I'm all for all sides doing better. But they're not covering this, and you don't need, and they wouldn't wait in the case of the right to know the identity of the shooter. Number two, understand and appreciate what Charlie did, because if you don't, you won't understand the anger. The press is treating this like an unfortunate thing. What they're not doing is factoring in just how angry people on the right are. And the press doesn't seem to get that. Our colleagues in the establishment media, what I call the dominant media, they don't seem to get that. And then lastly, stop covering Charlie like he was a freak, and own up to the past coverage. I saw CNN's media critic yesterday in a special newsletter about Charlie write glowingly about how wonderful Charlie was and all the wonderful things Charlie did. Go look at that guy's previous coverage. Own up to the demonization that occurred about Charlie for years. I'm not saying that's what got him killed, but what I am saying is you can't suddenly decide the guy's a great guy without looking at your previous coverage and asking the question, why didn't we think he was a great guy before? Why didn't we respect what he did, even if we disagreed with him ideology, because people in the media are liberal? They should have respected what he did in his life, because he was entitled to it, because he was an historical figure at 31. He was an historical figure for his role, not just in the president's reelection campaign, but in understanding how to appeal to young people and how to have a servant's heart in the rough and tumble world of politics.
You know, Mark, I really try not to give attention, both personally and professionally, to the outliers, the freaks, the provocateurs, the flamethrowers, the people with social media who today do suggest that Charlie Kirk, because of his position on the Second Amendment or because of abstract concepts of accusations of hate, got what he deserved. But then it either bleeds up or bleeds down from those random posters on social media to places like MSNBC, where yesterday analyst and commentator and former political advisor Matthew Dowd had this to say in the wake of the death of Charlie.
Yeah, and again, I emphasize what you just emphasized. We don't know any of the full details of this. That we don't know if this was a supporter shooting their gun off in celebration, or so we have no idea about this.
He speculates whether or not it was a supporter firing off a gun in celebration, but then he goes on, Mark, to say, in a way, Charlie asked for this. He got what he wanted in America. Listen.
Because as we were just talking about a moment ago with Alan, after one of the Doge employees was allegedly attacked in Washington, D.C., that's what Donald Trump used as justification to send in federal troops into Washington, D.C. to get things under control. The carjacking situation, he used that. And I know it's hard to predict the future, Mark, but you can imagine the administration using this as a justification for something.
So Matthew Dowd said that you put hate out there and you get hate back. Matthew Dowd was fired, by the way, yesterday by MSNBC. The second clip was Katie Tur, a host on MSNBC, saying this will now be this will be the predicate for Donald Trump to continue his authoritarian march into the United States cities. I don't know if it bleeds up or bleeds down, Mark. I don't know if this is the media giving into a mass psychosis that exists out there in the populace reflected on social media, or I don't know if social media is the tail wagging to the dog of MSNBC.
Well, a lot embedded there for sure. I texted one of our mutual friends yesterday who responded to people like that online with a three-word phrase. The first word is go, and the third word is yourself. And I texted him and I said, Charlie would not want you to be this angry. This person isn't worth your time. And I think that's the right attitude mentally, and I think it's the right attitude in terms of what Charlie would have wanted. At the same time, I don't think we can be silent. The fact that Matthew Dowd, I don't like when people lose their jobs. People say stuff live that, but he seemed to be insufficiently contrite about it. And as your question suggests, the mindset that would cause someone to say that is insidious, and it does exist online. But we have to deal with real life, and we have to deal with love and productivity, and not try to out-hate people on Twitter.
You're preaching the better angels. You really are. And I acknowledge in this moment it is very difficult, and I am battling that personally, Mark.
Yeah,
I am battling my own anger.
I get it.
I truly am.
Yeah.
I want to give in. I want to give in to my anger, personally and professionally. And I know you do, and I know that many people do. I know many people listening are having that same tension internally. I guess what I wonder is if not a significant portion of our population is given into a mass psychosis. We talked about the concept of mass psychosis during COVID, how fear can run rampant through a population, warp your sense of reality, and change who you are, or reveal who you are to your neighbor. And I have to wonder if there's not some kind of mass psychosis. There are always going to be crazy people on the left and the right. Crazy people exist. But I am concerned as much about the assassination of Charlie Kirk by the response and the celebration of the death of Charlie Kirk. And if that is not a reflection of a real mass psychosis, it's been bred through the irresponsibility of media in teaching everyone that if you disagree, you're at minimum, honestly, minimum a bigot, most probably a fascist, and at maximum a Nazi. At that point, you give license to the worst of us.
Yeah. So decades of tens of millions of our fellow citizens unaware of the pain caused by being barred from college campuses, or not being able to speak out if you're a student and you're a conservative, or cancel culture, or being denied opportunities because you're conservative. Decades of that, and the left seems oblivious to it, even now. And now we have Charlie, a free speech advocate who went boldly, aggressively, and as a happy warrior onto college campuses. So my preferred next step for everyone is for people on the left to say, tell us about Charlie. Tell us why you felt so strongly about him. Tell him what he did that made you all feel he was such a great leader. And for people on the right and people like me, objective journalists who understand what happened, to tell them, let them understand how Charlie's death is a metaphor for decades of built up anger and frustration about how the right was treated. And then I'd ask people on the right to try to be similarly understanding. Why, how could they not see Charlie's influence? How could they not see what he represented? Let's try to explain it to them. Better angels, but also better outcome. Because I can tell you, just hating them and being angry at them and saying, go F yourself to them, it's not right for America. And I feel confident saying it's not what Charlie would have wanted. It's not what Charlie would want. He doesn't want us to be at war, a civil war in America. He doesn't. So let's explain it to them. Let's explain to them. Let us tell you, and make sure they need to listen. If they say we don't care about some right-wing zealot, well, then we can be angry. But for now, I'd like people in the press who understand it and people on the right who love Charlie, explain it to them. Kill them with kindness. Make them see that this was someone trying to right decades of inequity and unfairness.